Before we begin, take a moment and think about your current financial situation. Not just your income, but your daily behavior around money. Do you feel in control, or do you feel like money slips through your hands? Now imagine two people. Both earn the same salary. Both have similar opportunities. But after 10 years, one has built wealth and freedom. The other is still stuck, stressed, and dependent on the next paycheck. What created this difference? It was not luck. It was not talent. It was not even knowledge alone. It was habits. Small, repeated actions that seemed insignificant in the moment, but powerful over time. This is where most people misunderstand success. They look for big breakthroughs, a perfect investment, a sudden opportunity. But real wealth is built quietly, in daily choices that no one notices. Imagine checking your phone late at night and making an impulse purchase. It feels small, almost invisible, but repeated over months, and it silently destroys your ability to invest. Now imagine the opposite. A small automatic investment every month. You barely feel it, but over years it compounds into something meaningful. This is why this matters in real life and investing. Your financial future is not decided by one decision. It is decided by what you do consistently. Have you ever felt like you earn enough but still cannot build wealth? Tell me in the comments. Here is something slightly uncomfortable but important. Spending less alone will not make you rich, but unconscious spending will definitely keep you poor. Do you agree or disagree? Think about your last major purchase. Was it planned or emotional? This is not about blaming yourself. It is about understanding the system you are living in. Because once you understand it, you can redesign it. If you are starting today, do one simple thing. Observe your money behavior for the next 7 days. Do not change anything yet. Just watch. You will notice patterns you never saw before. And that awareness will become your turning point. Because here is the truth. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And your habits are the foundation of those systems. So now the real question begins. If small actions shape your entire financial future, then how powerful can one tiny habit really be? Let us step into the first chapter, where you will discover something surprising, that the smallest habits, almost invisible, can create the biggest results. Chapter 1. The surprising power of atomic habits. Most people underestimate the power of small actions. They believe success comes from one big opportunity, one lucky break, or one life-changing decision. But in reality, life usually changes through tiny repeated behaviors that slowly shape your future. This idea sounds simple at first, almost too simple. But this is exactly why people ignore it. Imagine a plane leaving from one city toward another destination. If the pilot changes the direction by only a few degrees, the plane may still look correct in the beginning. Passengers may not notice anything unusual. But after hours of travel, the plane ends up in a completely different place. Habits work the same way. A tiny improvement repeated daily can completely change your financial future, your health, your confidence, and your relationships. And a tiny bad decision repeated daily can slowly damage them. This is where most people make mistakes. They judge habits based on immediate results. If someone invests a small amount today, nothing dramatic happens. If someone skips saving money for 1 week, life still looks normal. So the brain concludes that small choices do not matter, but habits are like seeds. You do not see the tree immediately. Growth happens underground first. Think about investing for a moment. Many people dream about financial freedom. They watch successful investors and wonder how wealth was created. But often, the real answer is surprisingly boring. Consistent investing, controlled spending, patience, emotional discipline, tiny actions repeated for years. Imagine two friends in their 20s. Both earn similar incomes. One spends whatever is left after entertainment and shopping. The other automatically invests a small amount every month before spending. At first, their lives look almost identical. They wear similar clothes. They visit similar places. Their friends may not notice any difference. But 10 years later, the gap becomes massive. One person has assets, investments, and peace of mind. The other feels trapped despite years of hard work. This is the hidden power of habits. Results are delayed. People often quit because they expect immediate rewards. They go to the gym for 2 weeks and expect transformation. They invest for a few months and expect wealth. They read one book and expect wisdom. But real growth is quiet in the beginning. This is why patience becomes a competitive advantage. In investing, the market rewards people who can stay consistent longer than others. Not necessarily the smartest people, not always the most talented people, but the people who continue when results are invisible. Have you ever started a good habit and quit because progress felt too slow? Tell me in the comments. One of the most dangerous financial habits today is emotional spending. People buy things to feel temporary happiness, a new phone, a luxury item, an expensive dinner. For a moment, it feels exciting. The brain receives stimulation, but later, reality returns. Now imagine redirecting even part of that spending toward investments or skill building. The future version of you would live a completely different life. This is why habits are not only about money. They are about identity. Every action you repeat becomes evidence of the type of person you believe you are. If you regularly save money, you slowly become someone who values the future. If you regularly learn new skills, you become someone who grows. If you regularly waste money for emotional comfort, you become dependent on short-term pleasure. This is why small habits matter more than motivational speeches. Motivation creates temporary emotion. Habits create permanent direction. Imagine waking up every morning and checking social media for 1 hour before work. At first, it feels harmless, but over years, that lost time becomes enormous. Now imagine using even part of that hour for learning about investing, business, or personal growth. That single shift could completely alter your future income and opportunities. This is where the idea of compounding becomes powerful. Most people understand compounding in money. Very few understand compounding in behavior. Good habits compound into confidence, discipline, knowledge, and wealth. Bad habits compound into stress, debt, regret, and frustration. And here is something important many people ignore. Success and failure often look similar in the short term. Someone eating unhealthy food may look fine today. Someone avoiding savings may still appear financially stable today. Someone procrastinating may still survive deadlines for now, but habits always collect their price later. This is why tiny changes become dangerous or powerful depending on direction. If you improve by a small amount consistently, your future changes dramatically. If you decline by a small amount consistently, your future also changes dramatically. Would you rather enjoy small pleasures today or create larger freedom later? Comment 1 or 2. Now here comes an uncomfortable truth. Many people want extraordinary results while protecting ordinary habits. They want wealth without discipline, health without consistency, success without discomfort. But life rarely works that way. Your habits reveal your real priorities, not your words. This is why observing your daily behavior is more important than listening to your own promises. If you are starting today, begin with awareness. Do not try changing everything overnight. For 1 week, simply observe yourself. Observe how often you spend emotionally. Observe how much time disappears online. Observe what triggers bad financial decisions. Observe what encourages productive behavior. Awareness creates clarity. And clarity creates change. Imagine driving a car at night without headlights. That is how many people manage money and habits. They move forward blindly, hoping things improve automatically. But once awareness enters your life, you finally see the road ahead. And this leads to an even deeper realization. If your habits shape your future, then they are also shaping your identity. So the next question becomes powerful. Who are you becoming through your daily actions? Because in the next chapter, you will discover that habits are not just routines. They are votes for the type of person you believe you are becoming. Chapter 2. How your habits shape your identity and vice versa. Most people try to change their lives by focusing on outcomes. They say they want more money, better health, stronger relationships, or financial freedom. These goals sound exciting, but goals alone rarely create lasting transformation. This is where the deeper truth appears. Real change begins when you change the way you see yourself. Your habits are not just daily actions. They are evidence of your identity. Every small behavior sends a message to your brain about who you are. When you save money consistently, even in small amounts, you begin to see yourself as a disciplined person. When you read daily, you start believing you are someone who learns and grows. When you delay important work repeatedly, your mind slowly accepts the identity of a procrastinator. This process happens quietly. Most people never notice it. Imagine a person who says, I want to become financially successful. That sounds positive, but every weekend they spend impulsively, avoid learning about investing, and ignore their financial goals. Now compare this with another person. They may not earn a huge income yet, but they track expenses, invest small amounts regularly, and continue learning. Who is more likely to build wealth over time? The second person, because identity always pulls behavior in its direction. This is why temporary motivation often fails. People try to force actions that do not match how they see themselves. Imagine someone saying, I want to get fit, while secretly believing they are lazy. Or someone saying, I want to become wealthy, while believing rich people are greedy or success is impossible for them. Their actions eventually return to their identity. This is why lasting transformation requires identity change first. Instead of saying, I want to save money, start saying, I am someone who manages money wisely. Instead of saying, I want to invest, say, I am an investor. The difference may seem small, but psychologically it is powerful. Because humans naturally protect their identity. When a habit becomes part of who you are, consistency becomes easier. Imagine brushing your teeth. You do not wake up every morning debating whether to do it. It is connected to your identity. You see yourself as someone who maintains basic hygiene. The same principle can apply to money and investing. Imagine becoming the type of person who automatically saves before spending, who learns before investing emotionally, who thinks long-term instead of chasing quick pleasure. Over time, those actions stop feeling difficult. They become natural. This is why small wins matter so much. Every tiny action strengthens identity. When you invest even a small amount, you cast a vote for becoming financially disciplined. When you read one page instead of scrolling endlessly online, you cast a vote for becoming knowledgeable. When you avoid an unnecessary purchase, you cast a vote for self-control. No single action transforms your life instantly, but each action reinforces a direction. This is where many investors struggle emotionally. They compare themselves with people who already succeeded. They look at wealthy investors and feel discouraged because their own progress feels tiny. But successful people were once beginners too. The difference is that they repeated the right behaviors long enough for identity and results to align. Imagine someone planting seeds every day while another person laughs because nothing grows immediately. Months later, one person has a garden. The other still has empty ground. Identity grows the same way. Quietly, gradually, powerfully. Have you ever felt stuck between who you are now and who you want to become? Tell me in the comments. One important idea in this chapter is that bad habits also shape identity. If someone repeatedly overspends, they begin believing they are bad with money. If someone repeatedly quits projects, they begin seeing themselves as inconsistent. Over time, these identities become emotional prisons. People stop trying because they believe change is impossible. But here is the powerful truth. Identity is not fixed. It is built through repeated evidence. This means you do not need to transform overnight. You only need to start collecting new evidence. Imagine someone deeply in debt. They may feel hopeless, but if they begin tracking expenses daily, avoiding unnecessary purchases, and learning about investing, their identity slowly changes. At first, it feels unnatural, almost fake, but repetition creates belief. Eventually, they stop saying, I am terrible with money. Instead, they say, I am becoming financially disciplined. This is why consistency matters more than perfection. Many people destroy progress because of one mistake. They miss one workout and quit exercising completely. They overspend 1 month and stop budgeting entirely. They make one bad investment and avoid learning forever. But one mistake does not define identity. Repeated patterns do. Imagine a successful investor making one emotional decision. That does not destroy their identity, because their overall pattern remains disciplined. This is why you should never judge yourself by one bad day. Focus on the trend, not the moment. If you are starting today, ask yourself one important question. What type of person do I want to become financially and mentally? Not what goals you want, what identity you want. Then build habits that support that identity. For example, if you want to become financially free, practice behaving like someone who values the future. If you want to become calm during market volatility, practice emotional discipline before stress arrives. If you want to become successful in investing, train yourself to think long-term instead of emotionally reacting to daily noise. This is where investor psychology becomes powerful. The market constantly tests identity. When prices crash, fearful people panic. Disciplined investors stay calm because their identity is based on patience, not emotion. When trends become exciting, impulsive people chase hype. Long-term thinkers stay focused on principles. Your habits shape how you react under pressure. And eventually, your reactions shape your financial destiny. Think about your current financial habits. What identity are they reinforcing every day? Are your actions building the identity of an investor, or simply the identity of a consumer? Do you agree that identity matters more than motivation? Comment yes or no. Now, this creates an important question. If habits shape identity so powerfully, how exactly do habits work inside the brain and behavior system? Because in the next chapter, you will discover the simple four-step pattern behind every habit you repeat, whether it helps you or destroys you. Chapter 3. How to build better habits in 4 simple steps. Every habit, whether good or bad, follows a predictable pattern. Most people think habits are random behaviors, but they are actually part of a system running quietly in the background of daily life. Once you understand this system, you stop feeling confused by your own actions. You begin seeing why you repeat certain behaviors even when they hurt your future. This is where the real power of change begins. According to James Clear, every habit follows 4 stages. Cue, craving. Response, reward. This loop controls much of human behavior. Whether someone invests wisely, wastes money emotionally, exercises consistently, or procrastinates daily, the same pattern is operating underneath. Let us break it down simply. The first stage is the cue. A cue is a trigger that tells your brain to begin a behavior. Imagine hearing a notification sound on your phone. Immediately, your attention shifts. That sound becomes a cue. Or imagine feeling stressed after work. Stress itself becomes a cue for emotional spending, overeating, or endless scrolling online. This is why habits often feel automatic. The brain learns to associate certain situations with certain behaviors. The second stage is craving. Craving is the emotional desire behind the habit. People do not actually crave products themselves. They crave feelings. Someone does not buy expensive items only for the object. They crave status, excitement, comfort, or validation. Someone constantly checking stock prices may not truly crave information. They may crave certainty or stimulation. This is where investor psychology becomes very important. Many bad financial decisions are emotional cravings disguised as logical actions. Imagine an investor watching social media influencers talk about a hot stock. The craving is not just profit, it is fear of missing out. It is the desire to feel smart, included, or successful quickly. This is why emotional awareness matters more than most people realize. The third stage is response. This is the actual action you take. You buy the product, you open the app, you skip the workout, you invest the money, you delay important work. The response is the visible habit people notice, but the response only exists because the first 2 stages already happened internally. The fourth stage is reward. Every habit must provide some kind of reward, otherwise the brain will not repeat it. The reward may be physical, emotional, or psychological. Imagine someone buying unnecessary things online late at night. The reward is temporary excitement and escape from boredom or stress. Imagine someone investing consistently and seeing their portfolio slowly grow. The reward becomes confidence and a sense of progress. Rewards teach the brain what to repeat. This is why bad habits can feel powerful in the short term. They often provide immediate emotional rewards. Good habits usually reward you slowly. Investing does not make you rich overnight. Learning does not transform your career instantly. Exercising does not change your body in 1 week. But over time, these delayed rewards become life-changing. This is where many people lose patience. The modern world trains people to expect instant gratification, fast entertainment, fast shopping, fast success. But real growth rarely works that way. The people who win financially and emotionally are often the people who can tolerate delayed rewards longer than others. Imagine two investors during a market crash. One panics because they crave immediate emotional relief, so they sell everything. The other stays calm because their habits and identity are built around long-term thinking. Same market, different habit systems, different outcomes. This is why habits are not just actions. They are emotional loops. Once you understand the 4 stages, you can start redesigning your behavior intentionally. For example, if you want to stop emotional spending, identify the cue first. Maybe the cue is stress, loneliness, boredom, or social pressure. Then examine the craving. Are you truly craving the product, or are you craving emotional comfort? Now you can replace the response with something healthier. Instead of shopping, maybe you go for a walk, review your goals, or learn something useful. Eventually, your brain begins building a new loop. This is why awareness creates power. Most people stay trapped because they never examine their behavior deeply. They only judge themselves emotionally afterward. They say things like, "I have no discipline. I am bad with money. I always fail." But often, the real issue is not character. It is an unexamined habit loop. Have you ever noticed yourself repeating a bad habit even when you knew it was harmful? Tell me in the comments. One of the most dangerous financial habit loops today involves social comparison. Q. Seeing people display luxury lifestyles online. Craving. Wanting status, approval, or excitement. Response. Overspending to imitate success. Reward. Temporary emotional satisfaction. This cycle quietly destroys long-term wealth building. This is why many people appear wealthy while remaining financially fragile underneath. Real financial freedom often looks less exciting in the short term. It requires patience, restraint, and delayed gratification. But over time, the results become extraordinary. Now here comes an important insight. The goal is not to remove habits completely. The goal is to make good habits easier and bad habits harder. Your environment, routines, and emotional triggers all influence the loop. This means lasting change does not happen through motivation alone. It happens through system design. Imagine trying to avoid unhealthy food while keeping it visible everywhere in your home. Or trying to save money while constantly exposing yourself to shopping temptations online. Environment shapes response more than people realize. If you are starting today, observe one habit carefully. Write down the cue, the craving, the response, and the reward. Do not judge yourself. Just observe honestly. Because once you see the loop clearly, you stop feeling powerless. And this leads us to the next important idea. If habits begin with cues, then controlling those cues may completely change your behavior. So the next question becomes powerful. How do you design your environment and awareness so good habits become obvious and automatic? That is exactly what we will explore in the next chapter. Chapter 4. The Man Who Did Not Look Right. Many habits control your life without your awareness. You repeat the same behaviors daily, often without thinking about them at all. This is one of the most important ideas in Atomic Habits. Before you can improve a habit, you must first notice it. Most people live on autopilot. They wake up and immediately check their phones. They spend money emotionally. They snack while watching videos. They avoid important work. And at the end of the day, they wonder why life is not improving. The problem is not always lack of intelligence or ambition. The problem is unconscious behavior. James Clear explains this idea through a story about a medical worker who noticed something unusual in a patient. The patient did not look right. That small observation saved the person's life. The lesson is powerful. Tiny observations can reveal major problems. Habits work the same way. Sometimes the behaviors damaging your finances, productivity, and peace of mind are so normal to you that you stop seeing them. Imagine someone buying coffee, snacks, and unnecessary online products every day. Each purchase feels small, almost invisible. But after months or years, those tiny actions quietly steal money that could have been invested or used to build freedom. This is where awareness becomes life-changing. You cannot change what you refuse to notice. This sounds simple, but it is deeply psychological. The brain loves efficiency. Once behaviors become automatic, the mind stops paying attention to them. That is useful for survival, but dangerous for personal growth. Imagine driving home while thinking about something else. Suddenly you arrive without remembering parts of the journey. Habits operate similarly. Your financial decisions, emotional reactions, and daily routines often happen automatically. This is why many investors fail emotionally during stressful markets. They react automatically instead of intentionally. Fear appears. Panic selling follows. Excitement appears. Impulsive buying follows. The habit loop moves faster than conscious thinking. This is why awareness is the foundation of change. Before you build better habits, you must observe your current ones honestly. Not emotionally, not defensively, honestly. This is where many people struggle. People prefer comforting stories over uncomfortable truth. Someone may say, "I cannot save money because life is expensive." But after observation, they discover constant impulse spending. Someone may say, "I do not have time to learn investing," but they spend hours scrolling online daily. This is why self-awareness can feel uncomfortable at first. It removes excuses. But it also creates freedom. Because once you see the real pattern, you can finally change it. Imagine entering a dark room filled with obstacles. Without light, you keep hitting things and hurting yourself. Awareness turns on the light. The obstacles were always there. Now you can finally move intelligently. This is why James Clear suggests creating a habit scorecard. Write down your daily habits. Wake up. Check phone. Drink coffee. Spend money online. Skip exercise. Watch videos late at night. Then ask yourself a simple question. Is this habit helping my future or hurting it? Not every habit is obviously good or bad. Context matters. But awareness reveals patterns you normally ignore. Imagine tracking your spending honestly for 1 month. Many people become shocked by what they discover. Small emotional purchases often consume huge amounts over time. This is where investor psychology becomes important again. Wealth is not only about earning more money, it is about managing behavior. Someone with average income but disciplined habits can slowly build financial freedom. Someone with high income but unconscious habits may remain financially stressed for years. Have you ever tracked your behavior honestly and discovered something surprising? Tell me in the comments. One important insight from this chapter is that awareness itself often changes behavior. The moment people start tracking spending, they naturally spend more carefully. The moment they track screen time, they often reduce it automatically. Why? Because conscious behavior interrupts automatic behavior. This is why journaling, tracking, and reflection are powerful tools. Not because they are complicated, but because they force attention. And attention changes decisions. Imagine an investor reviewing every emotional trade they made during the year. Patterns quickly appear. Fear-based decisions. Impatience. Following trends emotionally. Without awareness, these patterns continue forever. With awareness, improvement becomes possible. Now here comes a deeper truth. Awareness is not about perfection. You are not trying to become someone who never makes mistakes. You are trying to become someone who notices mistakes earlier. That small difference changes everything. If you are starting today, spend 1 week observing your habits without judgment. Notice what triggers unnecessary spending. Notice what wastes your time. Notice what improves your energy and focus. Do not rush to fix everything immediately. Observation comes first. Change comes second. Because awareness creates clarity, and clarity creates control. Do you think most people are fully aware of their habits? Or are they living on autopilot? Comment your thoughts. Now, this leads to an important question. If awareness is the first step, how do you actually begin creating better habits consistently? How do you move from intention to action? That is exactly what we will explore in the next chapter, where you will discover one of the simplest and most powerful techniques for building lasting habits. Chapter 5. The best way to start a new habit. Most people fail to build good habits for one simple reason. They rely too much on motivation. They wait to feel inspired before taking action. They tell themselves that tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow they will start investing. Tomorrow they will wake up early. Tomorrow they will finally become disciplined. But motivation is unreliable. Some days you feel focused and ambitious. Other days you feel tired, distracted, or emotionally drained. If your habits depend only on emotion, consistency becomes impossible. This is why James Clear introduces one of the most practical ideas in the book: habit stacking. The idea is simple. Attach a new habit to an existing habit you already perform automatically. Instead of trying to create a habit from nothing, you connect it to something already stable in your daily routine. For example, after brushing your teeth, you meditate for 2 minutes. After making coffee, you review your financial goals. After receiving your salary, you invest a fixed amount immediately. The existing habit becomes a trigger for the new habit. This matters because the brain loves patterns. When behaviors are connected, they become easier to remember and repeat. Imagine trying to remember 10 separate habits individually. It feels overwhelming. Now imagine those habits connected naturally in sequence. The process becomes smoother and more automatic. This is where systems become stronger than willpower. Successful investors understand this deeply. They do not depend on emotional decisions every month. They build systems that automatically guide behavior. Imagine two people. One says, "I will invest when I feel ready." The other sets automatic investments immediately after payday. Years later, the second person usually builds far more wealth. Not because they were smarter, because their system removed emotional resistance. This is why structure creates freedom. Many people think systems feel restrictive, but in reality, good systems reduce stress. Imagine never worrying about whether you remembered to save money because the process already happens automatically. That creates peace of mind. This is also why small starting points matter. One of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to change their entire life overnight. They suddenly decide to wake up at 5 in the morning, exercise for 2 hours, read daily, stop spending emotionally, learn investing, and completely transform their mindset immediately. For a few days, excitement carries them forward. Then exhaustion arrives. The system collapses. This is why sustainable habits begin small. Imagine planting a tiny seed. At first, it looks weak and insignificant, but with consistency, it grows into something powerful. Habits work the same way. A tiny action repeated consistently becomes part of identity. If you want to become financially disciplined, start with one simple automatic behavior. Maybe you save a very small amount every week. Maybe you spend 5 minutes learning about investing daily. Maybe you track expenses for only a few minutes each night. The action itself may look small, but psychologically, it changes something important. You begin becoming someone who shows up consistently. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. Many people become obsessed with dramatic improvement, but dramatic improvement is usually temporary. Steady improvement changes lives permanently. Think about physical fitness. Someone exercising moderately for years will usually outperform someone exercising intensely for 2 weeks and quitting afterward. Investing works similarly. Consistent investing, even in small amounts, often beats emotional and inconsistent behavior. This is why long-term success often looks boring in the beginning. Quiet habits, repeated daily, without excitement or applause, but over time, the results become extraordinary. Have you ever started a habit with huge excitement and then stopped after a short time? Tell me in the comments. Another important idea in this chapter is clarity. Vague habits rarely survive. Saying, "I will save more money," is weak because it lacks structure. Instead, say, after receiving my salary on the first day of each month, I will invest a fixed amount before spending anything else. Now the brain knows exactly when and where the habit happens. This reduces decision fatigue. One reason people procrastinate is because unclear goals create mental resistance. Imagine waking up and saying, I should exercise sometime today. The brain delays action because nothing is specific, but if you say, after breakfast I will walk for 15 minutes, resistance becomes smaller. This principle is powerful for investors too. People often say they want financial freedom someday, but vague dreams rarely create consistent action. Clear systems do. If you are starting today, choose one tiny financial habit and connect it to something you already do daily. Keep it simple enough that failure feels difficult. Because the goal in the beginning is not perfection. The goal is repetition. This is where many people underestimate the importance of momentum. Once habits become automatic, they require less mental energy. And once momentum builds, progress feels more natural. Imagine pushing a heavy object. The beginning feels difficult, but once movement starts, maintaining momentum becomes easier. Habits follow the same pattern. Do you think discipline is more important than systems? Or do systems eventually create discipline? Comment your answer. Now this leads to another powerful realization. Even strong habits become difficult if your environment constantly works against you. So the next question becomes important. What shapes your behavior more deeply than motivation itself? The answer is your environment. And in the next chapter, you will discover why changing your surroundings may be more powerful than trying to change your mindset alone. Chapter 6. Motivation is overrated. Environment often matters more. Most people believe success depends mainly on motivation. They think disciplined people simply have stronger willpower, more energy, or a better mindset. But James Clear explains something surprising. Your environment often shapes your behavior more than motivation does. This is one of the most important ideas in the entire book. Because if your surroundings constantly encourage bad habits, even strong people struggle. And if your environment supports good habits, positive behavior becomes much easier. Imagine placing unhealthy food directly in front of you every day. Eventually, temptation becomes exhausting. Now imagine the same unhealthy food hidden far away, while healthy options remain visible and easy to access. Your behavior changes naturally. The same principle applies to money, investing, and productivity. Environment silently influences decisions. Imagine someone trying to save money while constantly watching luxury lifestyle content online. Every day they see expensive cars, designer products, vacations, and social comparison. Eventually, emotional spending becomes more likely. Now imagine another person surrounding themselves with books, financial education, disciplined investors, and long-term thinkers. Their environment quietly shapes different behaviors. This is why success is rarely only about intelligence. It is often about exposure. What you repeatedly see influences what you repeatedly do. This is where investor psychology becomes extremely important. Many investors believe they make rational decisions, but often their environment controls them emotionally without their awareness. Financial news creates fear. Social media creates urgency. Market hype creates greed. The environment constantly pushes emotional reactions. Imagine checking stock prices every few minutes because notifications keep appearing on your phone. The environment increases anxiety and impulsive decisions. Now imagine reducing unnecessary noise and focusing only on long-term strategy. Your emotional state changes immediately. This is why disciplined investors protect their mental environment carefully. They understand attention is valuable. One of the biggest modern problems is that companies compete aggressively for your attention. Every notification, advertisement, and recommendation is designed to trigger action. Usually spending action. This is why many people feel mentally distracted and financially inconsistent. Their environment constantly interrupts intentional thinking. Have you ever bought something you did not truly need because you saw it repeatedly online? Tell me in the comments. James Clear explains that humans naturally move toward what is visible, convenient, and obvious. This means good habits should be placed directly in your environment. Want to learn investing more consistently? Keep financial books visible. Want to save money more effectively? Remove shopping temptations from your daily routine. Want to spend less time distracted online? Reduce visual triggers that encourage endless scrolling. Small environmental changes can create huge behavioral shifts over time. Imagine someone who wants to wake up early for productive work. If their phone stays beside the bed all night, distraction begins immediately in the morning. But if the phone remains outside the room and their work materials are prepared in advance, the environment now supports focus instead of distraction. This is why behavior change becomes easier when the environment is designed intentionally. Most people try to fight bad habits directly, but often it is smarter to remove the triggers completely. Imagine someone trying to stop emotional spending while receiving shopping advertisements constantly. That battle becomes emotionally exhausting. But reducing exposure changes the game. This is why environment design creates hidden advantages. Successful people often appear highly disciplined from the outside, but many times they simply built environments that reduce bad decisions. This is an important difference, because relying only on self-control drains energy. Good environments reduce the need for constant resistance. If you are starting today, look carefully at your surroundings. Ask yourself, what behaviors does my environment encourage daily? Does it encourage investing or spending? Focus or distraction? Growth or comfort? This question alone can change your future direction. One powerful financial example is automation. Automatic investing changes the environment of decision-making itself. Instead of debating emotionally every month whether to invest, the system removes unnecessary thinking. The environment now supports consistency automatically. This is why smart systems often outperform emotional effort. Do you think your environment currently supports your goals or works against them? Comment honestly. Now here comes a deeper realization. Even with a strong environment, temptation still exists sometimes, so the next challenge becomes important. How do you protect yourself from bad habits when temptation appears repeatedly? That is exactly what we will explore in the next chapter, where you will discover the real secret behind self-control and why avoiding temptation is often more powerful than resisting it. Chapter 7. The Secret to Self-Control. Most people believe self-control means constantly resisting temptation. They imagine disciplined people fighting urges every day and somehow winning through mental strength alone. But James Clear reveals a very different truth. People with strong self-control are not always better at resisting temptation. Often, they are simply better at avoiding it. This idea changes everything. Because if you depend only on willpower, eventually you become exhausted. Willpower is like a battery. It weakens throughout the day. Stress drains it. Fatigue drains it. Emotional pressure drains it. This is why people often make poor financial decisions late at night, after stressful days, or during emotional situations. Imagine someone promising themselves they will stop unnecessary spending. But after a difficult day at work, they open shopping apps for emotional comfort. At that moment, the brain is not searching for logic. It is searching for relief. This is why relying only on self-control becomes dangerous. The environment, emotions, and mental state often overpower intention. Successful people understand this deeply. They do not constantly test their discipline. They reduce exposure to temptation itself. Imagine an investor who checks market prices every 5 minutes. Fear and excitement constantly influence their emotions. Now imagine another investor who limits noise, avoids emotional financial news, and focuses only on long-term strategy. Who is more likely to stay calm during market volatility? Usually the second person. Not necessarily because they have stronger emotions, but because they built better systems around attention and temptation. This is one of the biggest hidden advantages in investing and life. The fewer unnecessary temptations you face daily, the easier disciplined behavior becomes. Imagine trying to diet while keeping unhealthy food visible everywhere in your home. Every moment becomes a battle. Now imagine those temptations removed entirely. Suddenly, discipline feels easier. Money works the same way. If spending triggers constantly surround you, resisting becomes mentally exhausting. advertisements, luxury content, social comparison, one-click shopping. Modern environments are designed to weaken self-control. This is why many people feel trapped in cycles of spending, distraction, and procrastination. Not because they are weak, but because temptation surrounds them constantly. Have you ever made a financial decision emotionally and regretted it later? Tell me in the comments. One important insight in this chapter is that bad habits often begin with exposure. The more often you see something, the more normal it feels. Imagine constantly seeing influencers showing luxury lifestyles online. Slowly, your brain starts treating excessive spending as normal behavior. Now imagine regularly seeing disciplined investors discussing patience, long-term thinking, and financial freedom. That environment creates a completely different mindset. Exposure shapes desire. This is why protecting your attention matters so much. Attention is one of the most valuable resources in modern life. Where your attention goes, your behavior often follows. Imagine starting every morning with negative news, financial panic, and endless distractions. Your emotional state becomes reactive immediately. Now imagine beginning the day with learning, planning, and focused thinking. Your decisions become calmer and more intentional. This is why disciplined people often appear calm under pressure. They carefully manage what enters their mind repeatedly. This principle becomes extremely important during investing cycles. During market crashes, fear spreads everywhere. People panic because everyone around them panics. During market bubbles, excitement spreads everywhere. People become greedy because everyone around them appears successful. The environment amplifies emotion. This is why emotional investing destroys so many people financially. They react to temporary feelings instead of following systems. Self-control becomes easier when decisions are made before emotions appear. Imagine deciding your investment strategy calmly before market chaos begins. Now, your behavior depends less on emotional reactions. This is why preparation often beats discipline. Preparation reduces emotional pressure. The same principle works for spending habits. Imagine creating automatic transfers into investments immediately after receiving income. Now the money moves before emotional spending begins. This removes temptation from the process entirely. This is one reason wealthy people often focus heavily on systems. Systems reduce reliance on mood. Mood changes daily. Systems continue automatically. This is where many people misunderstand success. They admire discipline without noticing the invisible systems supporting it. A productive person may appear naturally focused, but often they designed an environment that reduces distraction. A financially disciplined investor may appear emotionally strong, but often they removed unnecessary temptation and noise from their routine. This is why smart people simplify important decisions. Too many choices create mental fatigue. Imagine constantly deciding whether to save money, invest, exercise, study, or stay focused. Eventually, mental energy collapses. But habits and systems remove repeated decision-making. This creates freedom. If you are starting today, identify one major temptation damaging your future. Maybe endless online shopping. Maybe emotional investing. Maybe constant distraction. Maybe comparing yourself to others financially. Now ask yourself an important question. Can I remove the trigger instead of fighting the urge repeatedly? That single shift changes behavior dramatically. Because the best way to defeat many bad habits is to avoid feeding them in the first place. This does not mean you become weak. It means you become strategic. Imagine trying to win every battle while standing inside a storm. Eventually, exhaustion arrives, but changing the environment changes the battle itself. Do you think modern technology makes self-control harder than before? Comment your thoughts. Now, this creates another important question. If avoiding temptation is powerful, how do you make good habits feel attractive enough that you naturally want to repeat them? Because people repeat behaviors that feel rewarding emotionally. And in the next chapter, you will discover how to make positive habits irresistible instead of forcing yourself through pure discipline alone. Chapter 8. How to make a habit irresistible. One of the biggest reasons people struggle with good habits is simple. Bad habits often feel enjoyable immediately, while good habits feel difficult in the beginning. Spending money feels exciting now. Saving money feels rewarding later. Watching endless entertainment feels easy now. Learning a new skill feels uncomfortable at first. This is why human behavior is deeply connected to emotion. People repeat what feels pleasurable. They avoid what feels painful or boring. James Clear explains that if you want habits to last, you must make them attractive, not through force, not through guilt, but by connecting them with positive feelings. This idea is extremely important in investing and financial growth, because many people secretly associate investing with stress, confusion, or sacrifice. They think building wealth means giving up happiness, so emotionally, they resist the process. But successful investors often think differently. They connect investing with freedom, peace of mind, opportunity, control over the future. That emotional connection changes behavior completely. Imagine two people saving money. One feels deprived every time they avoid spending. The other feels proud because every saved amount moves them closer to independence. Same action. Completely different emotional experience. This is why mindset shapes consistency. If a habit feels emotionally rewarding, repeating it becomes easier. One powerful strategy James Clear discusses is temptation bundling. This means pairing something you need to do with something you enjoy doing. For example, you listen to your favorite music only while exercising. You enjoy coffee while reviewing investments. You watch a favorite show only after completing productive work. The brain begins linking positive emotions with productive habits. Imagine someone who dislikes studying financial concepts. Instead of forcing themselves through painful routines, they create an enjoyable environment, comfortable space, relaxing music, interesting podcasts, small rewards after consistency. Now learning feels less like punishment and more like growth. This is where many people make mistakes. They turn self-improvement into suffering. Extreme restrictions, extreme pressure, extreme expectations. Eventually, the brain rebels. This is why sustainable habits require emotional balance. You are not trying to torture yourself into success. You are trying to build a lifestyle your brain naturally wants to repeat. Have you ever abandoned a good habit because it felt emotionally exhausting? Tell me in the comments. Another powerful idea in this chapter is that humans copy the habits of groups around them. Behavior is contagious. If people around you value investing, learning, discipline, and growth, those behaviors begin feeling normal. But if your environment glorifies overspending, status competition, and short-term pleasure, resisting becomes harder. Imagine entering a room where everyone discusses business ideas, investing strategies, and personal growth. Your thinking changes automatically. Now imagine constantly surrounding yourself with people who spend impulsively and avoid responsibility. That energy also shapes behavior. This is why social environments quietly influence financial futures. Humans naturally want acceptance. Often people spend money not because they need something, but because they want social approval. Luxury purchases frequently come from emotional signaling, not practical necessity. Imagine someone buying an expensive item mainly to impress others. The emotional reward comes from validation, not usefulness. This is why understanding emotional drivers matters so much. Many financial mistakes are emotional decisions wearing logical clothing. This becomes extremely dangerous in investing too. People chase trending investments because others appear excited. Fear of missing out becomes stronger than rational analysis. During market bubbles, social pressure creates irrational behavior. Everyone wants quick success. Everyone wants easy money. But disciplined investors understand something important. Excitement and profitability are not always the same thing. Sometimes the most boring financial habits create the greatest long-term rewards. Consistent investing, patience, controlled spending, long-term thinking. These behaviors may not feel exciting daily, but over years they become incredibly powerful. This is why successful people often learn to enjoy progress itself. Instead of chasing emotional highs constantly, they build satisfaction from consistency. Imagine someone tracking investments monthly and seeing slow but steady growth. That progress becomes emotionally rewarding. This creates momentum. Momentum is important because repeated positive experiences strengthen identity. You begin seeing yourself differently, not as someone forcing discipline painfully, but as someone naturally moving toward growth. If you are starting today, ask yourself an important question. How can I make my good habits feel more enjoyable and emotionally rewarding? Maybe you celebrate consistency instead of perfection. Maybe you create relaxing routines around learning. Maybe you connect investing with freedom instead of sacrifice. Small emotional shifts create powerful long-term effects. One important warning from this chapter is that immediate pleasure can also become dangerous. Bad habits become addictive because they provide fast emotional rewards. Social media gives stimulation instantly. Impulse shopping gives excitement instantly. Emotional spending gives comfort instantly. But the long-term consequences arrive later. This is why emotional awareness matters more than motivation alone. You must understand what feelings you are truly chasing. Are you buying something because you need it? Or because you feel stressed, lonely, insecure, or bored? That single question can save years of financial mistakes. Think about your last impulse purchase. What emotion was driving it? Do you believe emotions influence financial decisions more than logic? Comment yes or no. Now this leads to another important realization. Your habits are shaped not only by personal emotions, but also by the people closest to you. Family, friends, social groups. They quietly shape what feels normal, acceptable, and desirable. And in the next chapter, you will discover how the people around you can either accelerate your growth or slowly pull you away from the future you want to build. Chapter 9. The role of family and friends in shaping your habits. Human beings like to believe they make independent decisions. We like to think our habits, financial choices, and life direction come purely from personal logic. But in reality, much of human behavior is shaped by other people. Family, friends, coworkers, communities, even strangers online. The people around you quietly influence what feels normal, desirable, and acceptable. This is one of the most powerful hidden forces behind habits. James Clear explains that humans naturally imitate the behavior of groups because survival historically depended on belonging. For thousands of years, being accepted by the tribe meant safety. Being rejected meant danger. Even today, the brain still craves approval and connection. This is why social environments influence habits so deeply. Imagine growing up in a family where investing, saving, and long-term planning are normal conversations. You naturally begin viewing financial discipline as part of life. Now imagine the opposite. A family constantly living paycheck to paycheck, spending emotionally, and avoiding financial education. That environment shapes beliefs too. Neither person consciously chose those influences in the beginning, but the environment quietly shaped identity and behavior over time. This is why habits often feel normal depending on who surrounds you. People rarely question behaviors accepted by their group. If everyone around you overspends, excessive spending feels normal. If everyone around you complains about money but avoids learning, financial ignorance feels normal. But if your environment values discipline, patience, and investing, those behaviors begin feeling natural instead. This is why changing your circle can change your future. Imagine someone trying to build wealth while surrounded by people who mock saving and glorify reckless spending. The emotional pressure becomes exhausting. Now imagine being surrounded by disciplined investors and growth-minded people. The same financial habits suddenly feel easier to maintain. Environment shapes emotional momentum. Have you ever noticed your behavior changing depending on the people around you? Tell me in the comments. One dangerous modern influence is social media comparison. For many people, online environments have become their tribe. Every day they see influencers showing luxury lifestyles, expensive purchases, and unrealistic success stories. Slowly, the brain begins adjusting expectations. Ordinary life starts feeling inadequate. Patience starts feeling slow. Long-term investing starts feeling boring. This creates emotional pressure to appear successful instead of becoming financially secure. Imagine someone earning a decent income but constantly comparing themselves to unrealistic online lifestyles. Instead of investing calmly, they begin overspending to maintain appearances. This is one reason many people look wealthy while remaining financially fragile underneath. They are investing in image, not freedom. This is where investor psychology becomes extremely important. Strong investors think independently. They do not allow social excitement or panic to control decisions easily. During market bubbles, crowds become greedy. During crashes, crowds become fearful. Most people follow emotions spreading through the group. But disciplined investors understand something powerful. Crowds are emotional. Wealth is often built through patience and independent thinking. This does not mean ignoring everyone completely. It means choosing influences carefully, because the people around you shape your standards. If your friends constantly spend emotionally, your spending habits often rise too. If your circle values learning and growth, your standards improve naturally. This is why many successful people protect their environment intentionally. They understand that repeated exposure changes behavior slowly. Imagine spending 1 year around highly disciplined people focused on health, business, and investing. Your mindset would shift automatically, not because someone forced you, but because the environment changes what feels normal. Humans adapt to expectations around them. This is why accountability can also become powerful. When someone expects consistency from you, behavior often improves. Imagine telling a friend your investing goals publicly. Suddenly, your actions feel more real. Or imagine joining a group where members discuss financial progress regularly. You naturally become more aware of your habits. This is one reason mentorship and communities matter so much. Growth becomes easier when the environment supports it. But this chapter also carries an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the people closest to you may unintentionally slow your growth. Not because they hate you, but because your change makes them uncomfortable. Imagine someone becoming financially disciplined while their social circle continues overspending recklessly. Suddenly, your new behavior challenges the group's normal habits. People often resist changes that expose their own unhealthy patterns. This is why growth sometimes requires emotional courage. You may need to think differently before people around you understand your direction. This is especially true in investing. Long-term thinking often feels lonely in a world obsessed with quick results. Patience looks boring. Discipline looks restrictive. Consistency looks slow. But over time, those quiet habits create extraordinary outcomes. If you are starting today, examine your environment honestly. Ask yourself, who influences my financial behavior most strongly? Do they encourage growth or emotional spending? Do they support long-term thinking or constant comparison? Do they inspire discipline or distraction? These questions matter more than many people realize, because eventually, habits become culture, and culture shapes destiny. This does not mean judging others harshly. It means becoming conscious of influence. The people around you affect your thinking whether you notice it or not. Do you think your current environment pushes you toward growth or comfort? Comment honestly. Now, this creates another important question. If social influence shapes habits so strongly, then why do bad habits often feel emotionally rewarding even when they damage us long-term? What hidden needs are those habits trying to satisfy? That is exactly what we will explore in the next chapter, where you will discover how to identify the real causes behind bad habits and finally understand the emotions driving them beneath the surface. Chapter 10. How to find and fix the causes of your bad habits. Most bad habits are not random. They exist because they solve a problem, even if only temporarily. This is one of the deepest ideas in atomic habits. People often focus only on the behavior itself. Overspending, procrastination, overeating, constant distraction, emotional investing. But James Clear explains something important. Behind every habit is a craving, and behind every craving is a deeper emotional need. This is why bad habits can feel so difficult to break. They are not just behaviors. They are emotional solutions. Temporary solutions, but solutions nonetheless. Imagine someone shopping online late at night. The real problem may not be the spending itself. The real issue could be stress, loneliness, boredom, insecurity, or emotional exhaustion. The purchase creates a short emotional escape, a temporary feeling of excitement or control. But after the emotional reward disappears, the financial consequences remain. This is why many people repeat harmful habits even when they fully understand the damage. Logic alone rarely defeats emotional patterns. Have you ever known something was bad for you but continued doing it anyway? Tell me in the comments. This principle becomes extremely important in investing too. Many poor financial decisions are emotional reactions disguised as rational choices. Imagine an investor panic selling during a market crash. The real craving is not financial logic. It is emotional relief. Selling creates a temporary feeling of safety. Or imagine someone chasing risky investments after seeing others make quick profits online. The deeper craving may be status, excitement, validation, or fear of being left behind. This is why understanding your emotions matters more than many technical strategies. People often believe success comes from intelligence alone. But emotional awareness is equally important. Imagine two investors with the same knowledge. One becomes emotional during fear and excitement. The other understands their emotional triggers and stays disciplined. Over time, the emotionally aware investor often performs better, because behavior matters more than information alone. This is where many people misunderstand self-improvement. They try to destroy bad habits through force, extreme discipline, extreme restrictions, extreme pressure. But if the emotional need underneath remains unresolved, the habit usually returns in another form. Imagine someone using shopping to escape stress. If they suddenly stop spending but never address the stress itself, another unhealthy habit may appear later. This is why awareness must go deeper than behavior. You must ask, what emotional need is this habit trying to satisfy? That single question can completely change your understanding of yourself. Imagine constantly checking social media during work. Maybe the issue is not laziness. Maybe your brain craves stimulation because the task feels emotionally uncomfortable. Or imagine avoiding investing entirely. Maybe the problem is not lack of interest. Maybe the deeper issue is fear of failure or fear of losing money. This is why people often sabotage their own growth without realizing it. Unconscious emotional patterns quietly control behavior. James Clear explains that cravings are often connected to prediction. Your brain learns to associate certain habits with certain emotional outcomes. Stress equals spending relief. Boredom equals entertainment. Loneliness equals scrolling online. Fear equals avoiding action. Over time, these loops become automatic. The brain begins expecting emotional rewards before the habit even happens. This is why cravings can feel so powerful. But here is the encouraging truth. You can retrain these emotional associations. Imagine replacing emotional spending with exercise, journaling, learning, or productive routines that create healthier emotional rewards. At first, the brain resists because the old pattern feels familiar. But with repetition, new emotional associations begin forming. This is why replacing habits often works better than simply removing them. Humans naturally seek emotional relief. The goal is not to become emotionless. The goal is to choose healthier responses. Think about financial stress for a moment. Many people respond to stress by avoiding reality completely. They stop checking finances. They avoid learning about investing. They delay difficult decisions. Avoidance creates temporary comfort. But long-term, avoidance usually increases fear. Now imagine someone responding differently. Instead of avoiding discomfort, they face small financial problems consistently and calmly. Over time, confidence grows. This is why courage often begins with small repeated actions, not dramatic moments. Tiny moments of honesty repeated consistently. One important insight in this chapter is that habits are often tied to identity and environment together. Imagine someone surrounded by people who constantly overspend emotionally. The behavior feels socially normal. Now combine that with stress or insecurity. The habit becomes even stronger emotionally. This is why lasting change requires understanding both internal emotions and external influences. If you only change one, progress becomes harder. If you are starting today, choose one bad habit and study it honestly. Do not judge yourself immediately. Instead, ask, when does this habit happen most often? What emotion appears before it? What reward am I seeking emotionally? This level of awareness changes everything. Because once you understand the emotional engine behind a habit, you stop fighting blindly. And blind fighting rarely creates lasting change. Imagine trying to solve a problem without understanding its cause. You waste energy attacking symptoms instead of fixing the root issue. This is why deep self-awareness creates power. Not shallow motivation, not temporary excitement. Real understanding. Do you think most people understand the emotional reasons behind their habits? Or do they only notice the behavior itself? Comment your thoughts. Now, this creates another important realization. Understanding habits emotionally is powerful, but lasting success also requires consistency. And consistency becomes difficult when habits feel complicated or exhausting. So the next question becomes important. How do you make positive habits so easy that resistance almost disappears? That is exactly what we will explore in the next chapter, where you will discover why moving slowly is often far more powerful than trying to transform your life overnight. Chapter 11. Walk slowly but never backward. One of the biggest mistakes people make in self-improvement is trying to change too much, too fast. They become excited after reading a book, watching a motivational video, or imagining a better future. Suddenly, they want to transform everything overnight. Wake up early, exercise daily, invest perfectly, stop all bad habits, become highly productive immediately. For a short time, excitement creates momentum, but eventually reality arrives. Mental exhaustion appears, motivation weakens, life becomes stressful again, and slowly, the system collapses. This is why James Clear emphasizes a powerful principle. Walk slowly, but never backward. The goal is not dramatic intensity. The goal is sustainable consistency. Because small actions repeated for years become life-changing. Imagine learning about investing. Many people try to absorb everything immediately. Stocks, real estate, market psychology, economic trends, technical analysis. After a few weeks, they feel overwhelmed and confused. Some quit entirely because progress feels too slow. Now imagine another person learning patiently, a little every day. Steady reading, steady investing, steady observation. Years later, the difference becomes enormous, not because they moved faster, because they continued moving. This is one of the greatest hidden advantages in life. Consistency compounds. Just like money compounds through investing, habits compound through repetition. A small improvement repeated daily creates massive long-term results. But people often quit before compounding becomes visible. This is where patience becomes emotionally difficult. Humans naturally want immediate evidence that effort is working. Imagine planting seeds and digging them up every week to check growth. Nothing survives that way. Habits require trust before visible results appear. This is especially true financially. Someone investing consistently may feel frustrated in the beginning because progress looks small. The account grows slowly. The excitement feels limited. Meanwhile, other people appear to make quick money through risky decisions, trends, or speculation. This creates emotional temptation. People begin abandoning steady progress to chase fast rewards. But this is where disciplined investors think differently. They understand that wealth is usually built slowly before it becomes visible suddenly. Imagine a snowball rolling down a hill. At first, movement looks tiny, almost meaningless. But as momentum builds, growth accelerates dramatically. Habits work exactly the same way. The early phase feels slow because identity, systems, and consistency are still developing. But eventually, those small repeated actions create extraordinary momentum. Have you ever quit something because results felt too slow? Tell me in the comments. One dangerous modern habit is comparing your beginning to someone else's middle. Social media makes this problem worse. People see successful investors, entrepreneurs, or creators displaying final outcomes. Luxury lifestyles, big profits, recognition. but they rarely see the quiet years of repetition behind the scenes. The boring habits, the small improvements, the emotional struggles, the consistency without applause. This creates unrealistic expectations. People start believing success should happen quickly, and when real progress feels slower, they assume failure is happening, but often progress is working invisibly underneath the surface. This is why James Clear explains the importance of focusing on systems instead of immediate outcomes. Outcomes are delayed. Systems operate daily. Imagine someone obsessed only with losing weight quickly. Temporary motivation may create short-term effort. Now imagine someone focused on becoming the type of person who exercises consistently. That identity creates long-term behavior. The same applies to investing. Someone obsessed only with getting rich quickly often takes emotional risks. Someone focused on building disciplined financial habits usually creates stronger long-term stability. This is why direction matters more than speed. Even tiny progress matters if the direction is correct. Imagine improving your financial habits by only a small amount each month, spending slightly less emotionally, learning slightly more consistently, investing slightly more intelligently. Over years, those tiny changes completely transform your life. This is the power of gradual improvement. Unfortunately, many people destroy progress emotionally because they expect perfection. They miss one workout and feel like failures. They overspend once and abandon budgeting completely. They make one investing mistake and stop learning entirely, but perfection is not required. Consistency is. This is why James Clear says missing once is an accident, but missing repeatedly becomes a new habit. Successful people are not perfect people. They simply return to the path faster after mistakes. Imagine two investors during difficult periods. One makes emotional mistakes and completely gives up on discipline afterward. The other also makes mistakes but calmly returns to long-term principles. Over time, the second person usually succeeds because recovery matters more than temporary failure. This idea is deeply important psychologically. Many people stay trapped not because of mistakes, but because of shame after mistakes. Shame creates avoidance. Avoidance destroys consistency. But growth requires flexibility. You are not building a perfect life. You are building resilient systems. If you are starting today, stop focusing only on massive transformation. Focus on becoming slightly better consistently. One smarter financial decision. One less emotional purchase. One more hour spent learning instead of distracting yourself. Tiny improvements matter, because repeated tiny improvements eventually become identity. And identity shapes destiny. Think about your current habits honestly. If you continued them for the next 10 years, where would they lead you financially and emotionally? That question alone can change your future direction. Do you believe consistency is more important than intensity? Comment yes or no. Now this creates another important realization. If small, consistent actions matter so much, then reducing effort and resistance becomes incredibly valuable. Because the easier a habit feels, the more likely you are to repeat it. And in the next chapter, you will discover one of the most powerful principles in human behavior. The law of least effort. A principle quietly shaping your spending, productivity, investing, and daily decisions whether you realize it or not. Chapter 12. The law of least effort. Human beings naturally move toward convenience. This is not laziness alone. It is biology. The brain constantly looks for ways to save energy. For thousands of years, conserving energy helped humans survive. This is why habits that feel easy are far more likely to continue, and habits that feel difficult often get delayed, avoided, or abandoned completely. James Clear calls this the law of least effort. People naturally choose the option requiring the least resistance. This principle quietly controls much of daily life. Imagine two choices after work. One option is sitting comfortably watching endless videos. The other is studying investing, exercising, or improving skills. The easier option usually wins unless systems are designed intentionally. This is why environment and convenience matter so much. The easier a habit becomes, the more likely you are to repeat it consistently. Successful people understand this deeply. They do not only depend on motivation, They reduce friction around good habits and increase friction around bad habits. Imagine someone wanting to invest consistently. If the process feels complicated every month, emotional resistance grows. But automatic investing removes effort from the decision. Now consistency becomes easier. This is why automation is one of the most powerful financial habits. It reduces emotional thinking, it reduces procrastination, and it reduces opportunities for impulsive spending. Imagine receiving income and automatically transferring a portion into investments before touching the money. Now, discipline becomes part of the system itself. This is one reason many wealthy people focus heavily on systems and routines instead of emotional motivation. Systems reduce unnecessary decision-making, and decision fatigue is real. Every day your brain makes countless choices. What to eat, what to watch, what to buy, what to avoid. Over time, mental energy weakens. This is why people often make worse decisions late in the day. Financially, this becomes dangerous. Late-night emotional shopping, impulsive trading, stress spending, avoiding important financial planning. The brain chooses temporary comfort because it feels easier emotionally. Have you ever delayed something important simply because it felt mentally difficult? Tell me in the comments. This principle explains why many good intentions fail. People want to improve their lives, but their systems create too much resistance. Imagine someone wanting to read more books, but their phone remains constantly beside them with endless distractions available instantly. Which option feels easier for the brain? Usually distraction. Now imagine books visible and accessible while distracting apps are harder to reach. Suddenly, behavior changes naturally. This is why reducing friction matters. Good habits should become simple, visible, and convenient. Bad habits should become difficult, slow, and inconvenient. Imagine wanting to reduce emotional spending. One simple strategy is removing saved payment methods from shopping apps. Now every purchase requires extra effort. That tiny increase in friction interrupts impulsive behavior. Or imagine wanting to reduce unnecessary market checking as an investor. Removing constant notifications creates emotional distance from daily volatility. This protects long-term thinking. Small barriers can create surprisingly powerful behavioral changes. This is because habits often happen automatically when resistance is low. One dangerous modern problem is that unhealthy habits are becoming easier while valuable habits are becoming harder emotionally. Entertainment is instant. Shopping is instant. Distraction is instant. But learning, investing, exercising, and building wealth require patience and delayed gratification. This creates a psychological imbalance. The brain naturally drifts toward immediate convenience unless systems protect focus intentionally. This is why disciplined environments matter more than occasional motivation. Imagine someone trying to save money while receiving shopping advertisements every few minutes. Their environment constantly encourages spending. Now imagine someone building a calmer environment focused on long-term goals, learning, and intentional decisions. Their emotional state changes gradually. This is where investor psychology becomes important again. The best investors often simplify decisions. Instead of reacting emotionally to every market movement, they create rules and systems that reduce unnecessary thinking. Because complexity increases emotional mistakes. Simple, consistent systems often outperform complicated emotional strategies. This idea applies to habits, too. Many people fail because they make improvement feel overwhelming. Extreme goals, extreme schedules, extreme expectations. The brain sees too much difficulty and chooses avoidance instead. This is why simplicity creates momentum. If you are starting today, ask yourself one powerful question. How can I make good habits easier and bad habits harder? Maybe you automate savings. Maybe you prepare your environment for focused work. Maybe you reduce exposure to spending triggers. Maybe you simplify investing decisions instead of overcomplicating them emotionally. Tiny reductions in friction create enormous long-term effects. Imagine water flowing downhill. Water naturally follows the easiest path available. Human behavior works similarly. This is why your environment and systems matter more than most people realize. The easier the path toward growth becomes, the more naturally you continue moving forward. Do you think modern technology has made distraction too convenient? Comment your thoughts. Now, this leads to another important realization. Even when habits become easier, people still struggle with starting. Procrastination remains one of the biggest obstacles in productivity, investing, and personal growth. So the next question becomes powerful. How do you overcome the mental resistance that appears right before action begins? That is exactly what we will explore in the next chapter, where you will discover the 2-minute rule, a surprisingly simple strategy that can break procrastination and help you build momentum consistently. Chapter 13. How to stop procrastinating by using the 2-minute rule. Procrastination is one of the biggest hidden enemies of success. Most people do not fail because they lack intelligence or opportunity. They fail because they delay important actions repeatedly. They wait for the perfect mood, the perfect moment, the perfect level of motivation. But that moment rarely arrives. This is why James Clear introduces one of the simplest and most powerful strategies in the book, the 2-minute rule. The idea is simple. When starting a new habit, reduce it to something that takes less than 2 minutes to begin. Instead of saying, I will read for 1 hour, start with reading 1 page. Instead of saying, I will completely master investing, start with opening a financial book for 2 minutes. Instead of saying, I will transform my entire life, focus on simply beginning. This principle sounds almost too easy, but psychologically, it is extremely powerful. Because the hardest part of most habits is not the action itself, it is starting. Imagine standing outside a cold swimming pool. The mind resists entering. But once you are inside, continuing feels easier. Habits work similarly. The brain creates resistance before difficult tasks. Once movement begins, momentum reduces that resistance naturally. This is why people often feel relief after finally starting something they delayed for days. The emotional burden existed more in avoidance than in the task itself. Have you ever delayed something important and later realized it was not as difficult as you imagined? Tell me in the comments. The 2-minute rule works because it lowers mental resistance. Large goals create pressure. Tiny actions feel manageable. Imagine someone saying, I need to exercise every day for 1 hour. The brain immediately sees effort, discomfort, and commitment. Now imagine saying, I will put on my workout clothes and move for 2 minutes. Suddenly, the task feels easy to begin. And once behavior starts, continuing becomes far more likely. This is why action creates motivation more often than motivation creates action. Most people wait to feel ready before starting, but readiness usually appears after movement begins. This principle is extremely important in investing too. Many people delay investing for years because the topic feels complicated. Stocks, markets, risk, economic uncertainty. The brain becomes overwhelmed and chooses avoidance, but imagine reducing the task dramatically. Read 1 page about investing. Watch 1 educational video. Open an investment account without pressure to act immediately. Small actions reduce fear because they feel psychologically safe. This is how momentum begins. One small step repeated consistently becomes identity over time. Imagine someone investing tiny amounts regularly instead of waiting until they feel financially ready. Years later, those tiny beginnings often create enormous advantages. This is why starting imperfectly is more powerful than waiting perfectly. Many people destroy progress through perfectionism. They believe every habit must begin dramatically. Perfect strategy, perfect timing, perfect discipline. But perfectionism often hides fear. Fear of failure. Fear of looking foolish. Fear of not succeeding immediately. So instead of acting imperfectly, people avoid action completely. This creates a dangerous illusion, the illusion of preparation without progress. Someone spends years thinking about financial freedom but never invests. Someone dreams about improving life but never changes daily behavior. The future remains imaginary because action never begins. This is why tiny beginnings matter emotionally. Small actions prove movement is happening. And movement changes identity. Imagine someone who reads 1 page every day. At first it looks insignificant, but eventually they become someone who reads consistently. Or imagine someone investing even a small amount regularly. The amount may feel tiny, but psychologically they become an investor. Identity grows through repeated action, not dramatic intention. This is why the 2-minute rule is not really about 2 minutes. It is about mastering the art of showing up. Once showing up becomes automatic, growth becomes easier. This idea also explains why routines are powerful. Imagine waking up daily and beginning productive behavior immediately instead of debating emotionally. No endless thinking. No emotional negotiation. Just movement. The more automatic the start becomes, the less energy procrastination can steal from you. This is where many successful people gain hidden advantages. They reduce opportunities for hesitation. They create routines that begin automatically. For example, a disciplined investor may automatically review finances every weekend at the same time. No emotional debate. No waiting for motivation. Consistency removes friction. This principle becomes life-changing when combined with long-term thinking, because small beginnings often lead to extraordinary outcomes over time. Imagine a person starting with only 2 minutes of financial learning daily. That tiny habit grows into books, deeper knowledge, better decisions, and eventually stronger investments. All because they remove the fear of starting. This is why momentum matters more than intensity. A tiny action repeated consistently beats giant plans that never begin. If you are starting today, choose one habit you keep delaying. Now shrink it until resistance disappears. Not 1 hour. 2 minutes. Not complete mastery. Simple beginning. Because success rarely begins dramatically. It begins quietly, with tiny actions repeated before visible results appear. Think about one area of your life where procrastination keeps holding you back. What is the smallest possible action you could take today? Do you think people fail more from lack of talent or from delaying action too long? Comment your thoughts. Now, this creates another important realization. Starting habits is powerful. But what if you could design your life so good habits become almost unavoidable while bad habits become extremely difficult? That is exactly what we will explore in the next chapter, where you will discover how to make positive habits inevitable and destructive habits nearly impossible through smart systems and environment design. Chapter 14. How to make good habits. Inevitable and bad habits. Impossible. One of the most powerful ways to improve your life is to stop relying only on willpower. Willpower changes with mood. Stress weakens it. Distraction weakens it. Fatigue weakens it. But systems remain stable even when emotions change. This is why James Clear explains an important idea in this chapter. The best habits are not just habits you try to follow. They become habits your environment almost forces you to follow automatically. And the worst habits become difficult to repeat because barriers exist around them. This principle changes everything. Because success becomes easier when your systems work for you instead of against you. Imagine someone trying to save money every month through pure discipline alone. Every payday becomes a psychological battle. Spend now or invest for the future. Comfort now or freedom later. Now imagine automatic investing happening immediately after income arrives. The decision disappears. The system handles the behavior automatically. This is why automation is so powerful financially. It removes emotional negotiation. And emotional negotiation is where many people lose consistency. Have you ever promised yourself you would make a smart financial decision, then emotions changed your mind later? Tell me in the comments. James Clear discusses something called commitment devices. These are choices you make now that control your future behavior positively. Imagine deleting shopping apps from your phone to reduce impulsive spending, or locking money into long-term investments so emotional reactions become harder, or placing your phone in another room while working to reduce distraction. These small barriers create huge long-term advantages, because humans naturally follow the path requiring the least resistance. If bad habits are easy and convenient, repeating them becomes automatic. If good habits are easy and visible, consistency becomes easier too. This is why environment design matters more than many people realize. Imagine entering a room filled with distractions. Television, notifications, endless entertainment. Now compare that with an environment designed for focus and growth. Books visible. Goals written clearly. Distractions reduced intentionally. Your behavior changes naturally depending on the environment. This is especially important in investing. Financial markets are emotional environments. Constant news updates. Fear, excitement, predictions. Social media hype. Without systems, emotions easily control decisions. Imagine an investor constantly checking prices every few minutes. Stress increases. Impulse decisions increase. Now imagine another investor using clear, long-term rules and limiting unnecessary noise. Their environment protects emotional stability. This is why disciplined investors often appear calm during chaos. Not because they never feel emotion, but because their systems reduce emotional reactions. One important idea in this chapter is making bad habits difficult instead of simply trying harder emotionally. For example, if you overspend online frequently, remove saved payment information. Now every purchase requires extra effort and conscious thinking. If social media destroys your productivity, create friction around access. Move distracting apps away. Limit exposure intentionally. Tiny obstacles interrupt automatic behavior. This matters because many bad habits happen faster than conscious thinking. Emotion appears. Action follows immediately. But adding even small barriers gives the brain time to regain awareness. Imagine placing unhealthy snacks far away instead of directly beside you. Suddenly, mindless eating decreases naturally. The same principle works financially. Making emotional spending slightly harder can dramatically improve long-term behavior. This is why successful people often simplify important decisions in advance. They understand future emotions are unpredictable. Imagine deciding your investment strategy calmly before market fear begins. Now panic has less power over your actions later. Or imagine creating strict spending rules before entering emotionally tempting situations. Preparation protects discipline. This is where many people misunderstand freedom. They believe freedom means endless choice and flexibility. But too many uncontrolled choices often create chaos. Real freedom often comes from intelligent structure. Imagine someone deeply in debt because they constantly followed emotional impulses. That lifestyle feels unrestricted temporarily, but eventually it creates stress and limitation. Now imagine someone building disciplined systems around money, investing, and behavior. At first, it may feel restrictive, but over time, those systems create peace, stability, and options. This is why short-term discipline often creates long-term freedom. One dangerous modern problem is that technology has made bad habits incredibly convenient. Entertainment is instant. Shopping is instant. Distraction is instant. But valuable habits usually require intentional structure. Learning, investing, building skills, improving health. Without systems, convenience pulls people toward easy pleasure repeatedly. This is why awareness alone is not enough. You must build environments that support the future you want. If you are starting today, identify one good habit you want to make inevitable. Now ask yourself, how can I reduce friction around this behavior completely? Can you automate it? Schedule it. Prepare your environment in advance. Remove emotional decision-making. Then identify one bad habit damaging your future. Now ask, how can I make this habit harder, slower, or less convenient? These small changes create surprisingly powerful results over time, because behavior follows systems more consistently than motivation. Imagine a river flowing downhill. Water follows the easiest available path. Human habits work similarly. The easier the environment makes good behavior, the more naturally growth happens. Do you think systems are more powerful than motivation long-term? Comment yes or no. Now this creates another important realization. Making habits easy and automatic is powerful. But for habits to truly last, the brain must also feel rewarded emotionally. Because humans repeat behaviors that feel satisfying. And in the next chapter, you will discover one of the most important laws of behavior change. The reason some habits stick permanently while others disappear quickly. The fourth law, make it satisfying. Chapter 15, the cardinal rule of behavior change. Human behavior follows a simple principle. What feels rewarded gets repeated, what feels punished gets avoided. This is the foundation of the fourth law of behavior change. Make it satisfying. James Clear explains that habits only last when the brain receives some form of reward. This makes perfect sense biologically. For thousands of years, humans repeated behaviors that increased survival because those actions produced satisfying outcomes. Food created pleasure. Safety created relief. Connection created comfort. The brain learned through rewards. Even today, modern habits follow the same psychological system. This is why bad habits often feel powerful in the short term. Scrolling endlessly online feels stimulating immediately. Impulse shopping feels exciting immediately. Emotional eating feels comforting immediately. The reward arrives fast. Good habits are different. Investing consistently does not make you rich tomorrow. Exercising does not transform your body overnight. Learning a skill does not instantly change your career. The rewards are delayed. And this creates one of the biggest challenges in self-improvement. The human brain naturally prefers immediate rewards over distant benefits. This is why people often choose short-term pleasure even when it damages long-term freedom. Imagine someone deciding between buying something unnecessary today or investing that money for the future. The purchase creates instant emotional stimulation. The investment creates delayed future value. Emotionally, the brain often prefers the immediate reward. This is why financial discipline feels difficult for many people. Long-term rewards require patience before visible results appear. Have you ever chosen short-term comfort even though you knew it could hurt your future later? Tell me in the comments. This principle becomes extremely important in investing. Successful investing often feels emotionally unrewarding in the beginning. Consistent investing looks slow. Patience looks boring. Long-term thinking lacks excitement. Meanwhile, risky speculation and emotional trading create stimulation constantly. This is why many people sabotage wealth building emotionally. They confuse excitement with progress, but disciplined investors understand something powerful. Real wealth often grows quietly before becoming visible dramatically. The early rewards are not always financial. They are psychological. Confidence, control, peace of mind, reduced stress, a sense of progress. This is why James Clear emphasizes the importance of immediate satisfaction connected to good habits. If positive behaviors feel emotionally rewarding now, consistency becomes easier. Imagine tracking your investments monthly and watching steady growth over time. Even small progress creates emotional reinforcement. Or imagine marking each day you avoid emotional spending. That visible streak creates satisfaction and momentum. Humans love visible progress. This is why habit tracking can become powerful psychologically. It transforms invisible effort into visible evidence. And visible evidence strengthens identity. Imagine someone who saves money consistently for 6 months. The amount may still seem small, but emotionally, they begin seeing themselves differently. They become someone who follows through, someone building discipline, someone creating stability. That identity itself becomes rewarding. This is why small wins matter more than many people realize. Small wins create emotional momentum, and momentum keeps habits alive during periods when major results are still invisible. One dangerous modern problem is that technology constantly trains the brain for immediate gratification. Notifications, entertainment, shopping, social validation, everything arrives instantly. As a result, many people struggle emotionally with delayed rewards. Investing feels too slow. Learning feels too slow. Business growth feels too slow. The brain becomes addicted to stimulation instead of progress. This is why emotional awareness matters deeply. You must train yourself to appreciate gradual improvement instead of only dramatic outcomes. Imagine planting a tree. The early stages look small and unimpressive. But underground, roots are growing. Eventually, growth becomes visible above the surface. Habits work the same way. The early rewards are often invisible internally before visible externally. This is why celebrating consistency matters, not fake celebration. Real acknowledgement of progress. Imagine someone paying off debt slowly month after month. The process may feel slow financially, but emotionally, every payment creates momentum toward freedom. That feeling matters, because behavior repeated with positive emotion becomes stronger over time. This is why punishment rarely creates lasting improvement. Many people try to motivate themselves through guilt, shame, or self-criticism. I am lazy. I always fail. I have no discipline. But negative emotional identity often weakens consistency instead of strengthening it. Growth becomes easier when progress feels emotionally meaningful. This does not mean avoiding discomfort completely. Important growth still requires patience and discipline. But emotionally rewarding systems increase the chances of long-term success dramatically. This is why smart investors focus not only on money, but also on emotional stability. Because investing success depends heavily on repeated behavior over long periods, and repeated behavior survives more easily when the process itself feels rewarding. If you are starting today, ask yourself an important question. How can I make my good habits feel satisfying immediately, even before major results appear? Maybe you track progress visually. Maybe you celebrate consistency weekly. Maybe you connect financial discipline with peace of mind instead of sacrifice. Tiny emotional rewards create powerful long-term habits. Imagine trying to climb a mountain without any signs of progress along the way. Eventually, motivation disappears, but visible progress creates hope, and hope sustains consistency. Think about one habit you want to improve right now. What immediate emotional reward could strengthen that behavior? Do you believe modern society has made people too dependent on instant gratification? Comment your thoughts. Now, this creates another important question. If rewards help habits survive, then how do you maintain consistency daily without losing momentum over time? Because starting strong is easy, staying consistent is the real challenge. And in the next chapter, you will discover practical strategies for sticking with good habits every day, even when motivation fades and life becomes difficult. Chapter 16. How to stick with good habits every day. Starting a habit feels exciting. There is motivation, energy, hope, a vision of a better future. But after the excitement fades, reality begins. Stress appears. Distractions return. Progress feels slower than expected. And this is the moment where most people quit. Not because they are incapable, but because consistency becomes emotionally difficult when rewards are delayed. This is why James Clear explains an important truth. Success is not built through occasional motivation. It is built through repeated consistency. The people who achieve long-term results are usually not the people who feel motivated every day. They are the people who continue even when motivation disappears temporarily. This is where systems become more powerful than emotions. One of the simplest tools James Clear recommends is habit tracking. At first, habit tracking may seem small or unimportant, but psychologically, it is extremely powerful because humans naturally feel motivated by visible progress. Imagine placing a mark on a calendar every day you invest, exercise, study, or avoid emotional spending. Over time, those small marks create momentum. The brain begins seeing proof of consistency, and once people see progress, they naturally want to protect it. This is why streaks become emotionally powerful. Nobody wants to break the chain. Imagine someone who has invested consistently every month for 2 years. Missing a month suddenly feels emotionally uncomfortable because consistency became part of identity. This is one reason tracking works so well. It transforms invisible behavior into visible evidence, and visible evidence strengthens belief. Have you ever stayed committed to something mainly because you did not want to lose your progress? Tell me in the comments. One important lesson in this chapter is that habits should never depend entirely on mood. Mood changes constantly. Some days you feel focused. Other days you feel tired, stressed, distracted, or discouraged. If consistency depends only on feeling inspired, habits collapse easily. This is why routines matter. Routines reduce emotional negotiation. Imagine waking up every morning and debating whether to exercise, study, or review finances. That constant decision-making drains energy. Now imagine those behaviors becoming automatic parts of your routine. The emotional debate disappears. This creates stability. Successful investors often follow routines for the same reason. They avoid making emotional decisions based on daily market noise. Instead, they follow systems consistently because emotional reactions often destroy long-term performance. Imagine an investor checking market prices every hour. Fear and excitement constantly interrupt rational thinking. Now imagine another investor reviewing investments calmly on a fixed schedule while focusing on long-term goals. The second person usually experiences far less emotional stress. This is why discipline often looks calm rather than dramatic. Consistency is usually quiet. Another important idea James Clear explains is never missing twice. Missing once is normal. Life happens. Unexpected situations appear. Energy fluctuates. But the danger begins when temporary mistakes become permanent patterns. Imagine skipping one workout. That is not failure, but skipping repeatedly creates a new habit. The same applies financially. One emotional purchase will not destroy your future. One investing mistake will not ruin your life. But repeated emotional decisions create long-term consequences. This idea is powerful because it removes perfectionism. Many people quit completely after one mistake. They overspend once and abandon budgeting entirely. They miss one productive day and stop trying altogether. But successful people understand something important. Consistency is not perfection. It is recovery. The faster you return to the path, the stronger your long-term progress becomes. Imagine two people. One misses a habit once and emotionally gives up completely. The other also fails temporarily but calmly resumes the routine the next day. Over time, the second person almost always wins because resilience matters more than temporary failure. This is why self-compassion becomes important in growth. Not excuses, not avoidance, but realistic understanding. You are building long-term systems, not chasing short bursts of perfection. This principle becomes extremely important in investing because markets naturally involve mistakes and uncertainty. No investor succeeds perfectly every time. Even experienced investors experience losses, emotional challenges, and difficult periods. The difference is that disciplined investors continue learning instead of collapsing emotionally after setbacks. This is why emotional stability often matters more than intelligence alone. Many people know what they should do financially, but emotions interrupt consistency repeatedly. Fear, impatience, comparison, stress. These emotional forces quietly destroy long-term progress. This is why systems and tracking become protective tools. They keep behavior grounded when emotions fluctuate. If you are starting today, choose one habit you truly want to maintain long-term. Now make consistency easier to measure visibly. Track it, schedule it, simplify it, protect it from emotional chaos, because habits grow stronger when progress becomes visible and repeatable. Imagine climbing stairs in darkness versus climbing stairs with lights showing progress clearly. Visibility changes confidence. Habit tracking creates visibility, and visibility strengthens momentum. One important warning from this chapter is that success can become dangerous too. Once habits become automatic, people sometimes stop paying attention. They become comfortable, careless, emotionally disconnected from improvement. This is why awareness must continue even after progress appears. Because habits should support growth, not create unconscious repetition. Do you think most people quit because habits are difficult or because they lose emotional momentum? Comment your thoughts. Now this creates another important realization. Consistency becomes even stronger when someone else is involved. Because humans behave differently when accountability enters the picture. And in the next chapter, you will discover how accountability partners and social pressure can dramatically change behavior, discipline, and long-term success. Chapter 17. How an accountability partner can change everything. Human beings behave differently when someone is watching. This is a simple truth, but it has enormous psychological power. When actions remain completely private, people often break promises easily. They delay goals, ignore routines, avoid difficult tasks. But the moment another person becomes aware of your commitments, behavior changes. Suddenly, actions feel more real. This is why accountability can become one of the strongest forces in personal growth and investing discipline. James Clear explains that humans naturally care about reputation and social approval. For thousands of years, survival depended on belonging to a group. Being respected by the tribe mattered deeply. Even today, the brain still responds strongly to social judgment and expectation. This is why people often work harder when others are involved. Imagine exercising alone versus exercising with a partner expecting you to arrive. The emotional pressure changes behavior immediately. Or imagine telling nobody about your financial goals compared to publicly committing to consistent investing. The second situation creates responsibility. Responsibility changes action. Have you ever stayed consistent mainly because someone else expected something from you? Tell me in the comments. One important insight in this chapter is that accountability increases awareness. When nobody tracks your behavior, it becomes easier to ignore small mistakes. One unnecessary purchase feels harmless. One missed habit feels unimportant. One delayed financial decision feels temporary. But accountability shines light on patterns. Imagine someone reviewing spending habits weekly with a trusted friend or mentor. Suddenly, emotional spending becomes harder to ignore. Or imagine an investor discussing decisions regularly with disciplined people. Impulsive behavior becomes more visible and easier to control. This is why strong environments improve behavior naturally. People adapt to expectations around them. If your environment values growth, discipline, and responsibility, those behaviors feel more normal emotionally. This is why successful people often seek communities intentionally. Mastermind groups, investment circles, mentors, business partners. Not because they lack intelligence, but because accountability protects consistency. One dangerous problem in modern life is isolation. Many people struggle privately with financial stress, emotional spending, procrastination, or lack of discipline. Without accountability, unhealthy habits quietly grow stronger. Imagine someone repeatedly making emotional financial decisions without ever discussing them honestly. Patterns continue unnoticed for years. Now imagine having someone who calmly asks difficult questions. Why did you make this investment emotionally? Why are you spending beyond your goals? Why are you avoiding long-term planning? Those questions create awareness, and awareness changes behavior. This is why mentors can dramatically accelerate growth. A mentor often sees patterns you cannot see clearly yourself. Emotion clouds self-judgment. Imagine an investor panicking during a market crash. Emotion tells them disaster is permanent. But an experienced mentor may calmly remind them about long-term principles and historical patterns. This outside perspective prevents emotional mistakes. The same applies to habits. Sometimes you become so emotionally connected to your routines that you stop noticing unhealthy patterns completely. An accountability partner brings objective observation. This is one reason coaching, mentorship, and disciplined communities create powerful transformation. Not because they magically create success, but because they reduce unconscious behavior. One powerful strategy James Clear discusses is creating immediate consequences for bad habits. Humans respond strongly to visible consequences. Imagine agreeing to donate money every time you break an important commitment, or publicly sharing progress regularly so inconsistency becomes visible. Suddenly, bad habits feel less emotionally comfortable. Why? Because social consequences increase awareness. This matters financially too. Many people overspend emotionally because the consequences feel distant and invisible. Credit cards delay pain. Impulse purchases feel small individually, but accountability brings those hidden patterns into focus immediately. This is why honest financial conversations can become life-changing. Unfortunately, many people avoid these conversations because they feel uncomfortable emotionally. But avoidance rarely creates improvement. Growth usually begins with honest reflection. This does not mean surrounding yourself with judgmental or negative people. True accountability is supportive, not destructive. A good accountability partner encourages progress while still expecting honesty and responsibility. Imagine someone who reminds you of your goals during moments of emotional weakness instead of encouraging impulsive behavior. That kind of environment changes futures. This principle becomes extremely important in investing because emotional decisions often happen during moments of stress or excitement. Fear during market crashes. Greed during market bubbles. Without accountability, emotions can easily take control. But disciplined investors often surround themselves with systems and people who reinforce long-term thinking. This protects behavior during emotional extremes. One uncomfortable truth in this chapter is that many people avoid accountability because they fear exposure. They fear others seeing inconsistency, mistakes, or lack of discipline. But hiding problems rarely solves them. In fact, secrecy often strengthens bad habits because nothing interrupts the pattern. This is why openness creates freedom. Not perfect openness with everyone, but honest accountability with trustworthy people. If you are starting today, think about one area where accountability could improve your life. Maybe investing, maybe spending behavior, maybe productivity, maybe health. Now ask yourself, who could help reinforce consistency and honest reflection in this area? Sometimes one strong accountability relationship changes everything. Because humans are social creatures, behavior improves when expectations become visible. Imagine walking a tightrope alone versus walking while someone important watches carefully. Awareness changes performance. This is why accountability creates focus. Do you think people are naturally more disciplined alone or inside supportive communities? Comment your thoughts. Now this leads to another important realization. Even with discipline, systems, and accountability, people still develop different strengths naturally. Some habits feel easier for certain people than others, which creates a deeper question. How much of success comes from habits, and how much comes from natural talent or genetics? That is exactly what we will explore in the next chapter, where you will discover the truth about talent, hidden strengths, and why understanding your natural abilities can dramatically improve long-term success. Chapter 18. The Truth About Talent, When Genes Matter and When They Do Not. One of the most common beliefs in the world is that successful people are simply born different. People look at wealthy investors, athletes, entrepreneurs, or creators and assume talent alone explains everything. They are naturally gifted. They were born smarter. They have advantages I do not have. Sometimes this belief becomes an excuse for avoiding growth entirely. But James Clear explains a more balanced and realistic truth. Genes matter. But habits determine how far your potential actually goes. This is an extremely important distinction. Because many people underestimate the power of environment, repetition, discipline, and consistency. Imagine two people with similar natural ability. One develops strong habits for years. The other wastes time, avoids learning, and acts emotionally. Eventually, the disciplined person usually moves far ahead, not because of magical talent, because repeated behavior compounds. This does not mean natural differences are fake. People absolutely have different strengths. Some learn quickly, some communicate naturally. Some handle pressure better. Some think analytically, but habits decide whether those strengths become meaningful results. A talented person with weak discipline often loses to an average person with strong consistency. Have you ever seen someone extremely talented fail because of poor habits or lack of discipline? Tell me in the comments. This chapter becomes especially powerful in investing and financial growth. Many people believe successful investors possess extraordinary intelligence unavailable to ordinary people. But often the biggest advantage is emotional discipline, not genius. Patience, consistency, long-term thinking. Controlled behavior during fear and excitement. These are habits more than talents. Imagine two investors. One has high intelligence but reacts emotionally to market news constantly. The other has average knowledge but follows disciplined systems calmly for decades. Over time, the second investor often performs surprisingly well because behavior matters more than brilliance alone. This is one reason emotional control becomes such a powerful advantage financially. James Clear also explains an important idea called the comfort zone of competence. People succeed faster when habits align with natural strengths. Imagine forcing yourself into a career or skill completely disconnected from your personality and abilities. Progress feels exhausting constantly. Now imagine working in areas naturally connected to your strengths. Learning feels smoother. Improvement feels rewarding. This is why self-awareness matters deeply. Success becomes easier when you stop fighting your natural tendencies and start using them intelligently. For example, someone highly patient may naturally perform better as a long-term investor rather than a short-term trader. Someone analytical may enjoy studying businesses deeply. Someone highly social may thrive in entrepreneurship or leadership. This does not mean you avoid challenges. It means you choose environments where your strengths have room to grow. Imagine a fish trying to climb a tree. No amount of effort changes the fact that the environment does not match the strength. This is why comparing yourself blindly to others becomes dangerous. People have different starting points, personalities, and opportunities. Social media often hides this reality completely. You only see outcomes, not hidden struggles, sacrifices, or advantages. This creates emotional frustration. Someone sees another person becoming wealthy quickly and assumes they are falling behind. But comparison often destroys focus because it shifts attention away from personal growth. This is where many investors make emotional mistakes too. They compare their slow, steady progress to people claiming massive, quick profits online. Suddenly, long-term discipline feels boring. Patience feels weak. So they chase risky decisions emotionally. But wealth built through comparison usually becomes unstable. Real growth happens when you focus on improving your own systems consistently. James Clear explains that the goal is not to become the best in the world at everything. The goal is to position yourself where your natural abilities and habits work together effectively. This creates sustainable growth. Imagine someone naturally curious about business and investing. If they build strong learning habits around those interests, progress accelerates dramatically over time. The process feels meaningful instead of forced. This is why enjoyment matters too. Habits survive longer when they align with personality and interest. A person who hates every moment of a habit rarely maintains it for decades, but someone whose habits connect with natural strengths often continues consistently because the process itself feels rewarding. This is why successful people often appear highly disciplined externally. But internally, they may simply be working in areas deeply aligned with their strengths and interests. One important warning from this chapter is not to use genetics as an excuse for limitation. Many people quit too early because they assume they are not naturally talented, but improvement compounds dramatically through repetition. Imagine someone learning investing slowly but consistently for 10 years. Even average improvement repeated long enough creates extraordinary knowledge compared to the average person. This is why persistence often beats natural advantage over time. Consistency multiplies skill. If you are starting today, stop asking only, "What am I naturally good at?" Also ask, "What habits can strengthen my natural advantages over time?" Maybe you are naturally patient. That could become an investing advantage. Maybe you communicate well. That could become a business advantage. Maybe you love learning deeply. That could create enormous long-term opportunities. Your habits should support your strengths instead of constantly fighting against them. This creates energy instead of exhaustion. Think about your own life honestly. Which habits feel naturally enjoyable to you? And which ones feel forced constantly? That difference matters more than many people realize. Do you believe success comes more from talent or consistency? Comment your thoughts. Now, this creates another important realization. Even when habits match your strengths, motivation still rises and falls over time. Some days progress feels exciting. Other days it feels repetitive and difficult. So the next question becomes powerful. How do you stay motivated long enough to continue improving without becoming bored or overwhelmed? That is exactly what we will explore in the next chapter, where you will discover the Goldilocks rule, a fascinating principle explaining why humans stay motivated only when challenges feel balanced in the right way. Chapter 19, The Goldilocks Rule, How to Stay Motivated in Life and Work. One of the biggest challenges in building good habits is not starting. It is staying motivated long enough to continue. At first, new habits feel exciting. There is energy, hope, and emotional momentum. But after some time, repetition appears. The process becomes familiar, progress slows down visibly, and this is where many people lose motivation. James Clear explains this problem through something called the Goldilocks rule. Human beings stay motivated when they work on challenges that are neither too easy nor too difficult. The task must feel just challenging enough to remain interesting. This idea explains why people often quit goals in two situations. When something feels impossible, frustration appears. When something becomes too easy, boredom appears. Motivation survives in the middle zone. Imagine playing a video game that is impossibly difficult from the beginning. Most people quit quickly because constant failure feels emotionally painful. Now imagine a game with no challenge at all. Eventually, boredom appears because there is no growth or excitement. Habits work the same way. People stay engaged when progress feels achievable but still meaningful. This principle becomes extremely important in investing and financial growth. Many beginners overwhelm themselves immediately. Complex market analysis, advanced investing strategies, constant financial news, risky decisions they barely understand. The brain becomes overloaded. Fear increases, confusion grows. Eventually, many people quit learning completely because the challenge feels emotionally exhausting. Now imagine another approach. Learning step by step. Small investments first. Steady improvement. Gradual confidence building. This creates sustainable motivation because the difficulty feels manageable. Have you ever quit something because it felt too overwhelming or too boring? Tell me in the comments. This chapter also explains why mastery can feel emotionally strange. At first, improvement creates excitement because everything feels new. But over time, habits become automatic, and automatic behavior can feel repetitive. This is where discipline becomes more important than excitement. Many people believe successful individuals feel inspired constantly. But in reality, long-term success often involves repeating simple behaviors even when they no longer feel emotionally exciting. Imagine a disciplined investor consistently following a long-term strategy for years. Most days feel ordinary. No dramatic excitement, no emotional highs, just calm repetition. This is one reason patience becomes such a rare advantage. Most people chase stimulation, not consistency. Modern life makes this problem worse. Social media constantly trains the brain to expect novelty and excitement. Fast entertainment, fast trends, fast emotional stimulation. As a result, many people struggle to tolerate slow progress. Investing feels too boring. Learning feels too slow. Building real skills feels frustrating. So they jump constantly between goals, strategies, and distractions. But mastery requires staying with something long enough for deep improvement to happen. This is why the Goldilocks rule matters so much. You must adjust challenges carefully. If habits become too difficult, simplify them temporarily. If habits become too repetitive, increase the challenge slightly to restore interest. Imagine someone exercising with the exact same routine for years. Eventually, boredom reduces motivation. Now imagine gradually increasing the challenge while keeping it achievable. Interest returns because growth feels active again. Investing follows similar psychology. Someone learning basic financial concepts may eventually need deeper challenges to remain engaged. New knowledge, better analysis, more thoughtful long-term strategies. Growth continues when challenge evolves gradually. This is also why goals should stretch you without destroying confidence. Extreme goals can feel inspiring briefly, but if the gap feels too large emotionally, discouragement often follows. Imagine someone earning very little income suddenly expecting immediate financial freedom. The emotional distance between reality and expectation becomes overwhelming. Now imagine focusing on gradual progress instead. Saving consistently, reducing emotional spending, building investment knowledge slowly. The brain begins experiencing progress instead of hopelessness. This creates sustainable motivation. One important insight in this chapter is that professionals often rely more on systems than motivation. Amateurs wait for inspiration. Professionals continue even when emotions fluctuate. Imagine a writer only writing when emotionally inspired. Progress becomes inconsistent. Now, imagine a writer following a routine regardless of mood. Over time, results multiply dramatically. The same applies financially. Disciplined investors continue learning, planning, and investing consistently whether markets feel exciting or frightening. Because long-term success depends more on repeated behavior than temporary emotional intensity. This is where boredom becomes dangerous. James Clear explains that successful people often master the ability to stay consistent even when habits feel repetitive. This is extremely difficult psychologically because humans naturally crave novelty, but repeated fundamentals create extraordinary results over time. Imagine someone becoming bored with steady investing and suddenly chasing risky opportunities for excitement. That emotional need for stimulation may destroy years of disciplined progress. This is why emotional maturity matters financially. Not every valuable process feels exciting daily. Some of the most powerful habits in life are quiet, repetitive, and emotionally ordinary. But over years, those ordinary actions create extraordinary outcomes. If you are starting today, ask yourself an important question. Are my habits balanced at the right level of challenge? Too difficult creates frustration. Too easy creates boredom. Sustainable growth exists between those extremes. Maybe you need to simplify goals temporarily. Maybe you need fresh challenges to maintain engagement. The key is staying consistent long enough for compounding to work. Imagine climbing a mountain step by step instead of trying to jump to the top immediately. Steady movement creates progress without emotional collapse. This is how real mastery develops. Not through dramatic bursts of effort, through balanced repetition over long periods. Do you think people fail more because habits are too difficult or because they become bored too quickly? Comment your thoughts. Now this leads to one final important realization. Even good habits can create hidden problems if you stop thinking consciously. Because habits are powerful tools. But tools can become dangerous when used automatically without reflection. And in the next chapter, you will discover the hidden downside of habits and why awareness must continue even after success begins to appear. Chapter 20. The downside of creating good habits. Good habits can change your life. They can improve your finances, health, focus, productivity, and emotional stability. But James Clear ends the book with an important warning. Even good habits have a hidden danger. When habits become fully automatic, people sometimes stop paying attention. This creates a surprising problem. Habits are powerful because they reduce thinking. But growth still requires awareness. Without awareness, habits can slowly turn into unconscious repetition instead of intentional improvement. Imagine someone investing automatically for years without ever reviewing their strategy, learning new information, or adapting to changes. At first, automation creates discipline. But eventually, blind repetition may limit growth. Or imagine someone becoming financially successful through strict routines, but losing flexibility, creativity, or emotional balance over time. The habit remains strong, but awareness disappears. This is why habits should support thinking, not replace it completely. Have you ever continued doing something simply because it became routine, even when it no longer helped you? Tell me in the comments. One of the biggest dangers of habits is overconfidence. Once people become successful in one area, they sometimes stop reflecting honestly. Early success creates confidence. Repeated success creates certainty. And certainty can become dangerous. Imagine an investor experiencing strong returns during a rising market. Slowly, they begin believing every decision they make is correct. Risk increases. Carefulness disappears. Humility weakens. Then market conditions change suddenly. Without awareness, confidence becomes vulnerability. This is why disciplined investors constantly review their thinking instead of blindly trusting past success. Markets evolve. Economies evolve. Life evolves. Habits must evolve too. This chapter is deeply important psychologically because humans naturally seek comfort in familiarity. Once routines become automatic, the brain relaxes. That feels efficient emotionally. But it can also reduce growth. Imagine someone doing the exact same work every day without learning anything new. At first, consistency creates progress, but eventually, improvement slows because the person stops challenging themselves consciously. This is why reflection matters. You must occasionally step outside your routines and ask difficult questions. Are these habits still helping me grow? Am I improving or simply repeating? Am I becoming more aware or more automatic? These questions protect long-term development. One dangerous pattern in investing is emotional attachment to old strategies. People become comfortable with familiar methods even when conditions change. Instead of adapting intelligently, they defend habits emotionally because those habits feel connected to identity and past success. This is why flexibility becomes an important form of intelligence. Strong habits create stability, but awareness creates adaptability. Both matter. Imagine driving a car using only memory without watching the road ahead. Eventually, danger appears because the environment changes constantly. Life works similarly. Habits help you move efficiently, but awareness helps you respond intelligently to change. This balance becomes especially important financially. Someone may build strong saving and investing habits successfully, but eventually new stages of life require new thinking. Family responsibilities, career changes, economic shifts, different financial goals. Without reflection, old systems may stop matching current reality. This is why growth requires periodic review, not constant emotional overthinking, but honest reflection at regular intervals. Imagine reviewing your habits every few months calmly. Which habits are improving your life? Which habits create hidden stress? Which routines became automatic without purpose? That awareness prevents stagnation. One important lesson in this chapter is that mastery can create blindness. Experts sometimes struggle to notice mistakes because habits feel deeply familiar. This is why beginners occasionally ask valuable questions experienced people stopped asking years ago. Comfort can reduce curiosity, and curiosity is essential for growth. This is one reason great investors continue learning constantly even after becoming successful. They remain students mentally. They understand no system stays perfect forever. Humility protects growth, overconfidence destroys it. This lesson applies far beyond money. Imagine someone becoming highly productive but losing connection with relationships, health, or emotional peace. The habit system succeeded technically, but balance disappeared. This is why life requires awareness beyond efficiency alone. Success without reflection can become another form of unconscious living. James Clear ultimately reminds readers that habits are tools, not identity prisons. You are not trapped by your routines forever. You can improve them, adapt them, replace them, redesign them. That flexibility is powerful because life constantly changes, and intelligent people evolve with it. If you are starting today, take time to reflect honestly on your current habits. Not only bad habits, good habits too. Ask yourself, are these habits still aligned with the person I want to become? Do they support long-term growth and peace of mind? Or have some routines become automatic without deeper purpose? These questions create wisdom, because awareness is what separates conscious growth from unconscious repetition. One beautiful truth about habits is this: tiny actions shape identity over time, but awareness shapes direction. Without direction, even disciplined habits can slowly lead you somewhere you never intended to go. Imagine climbing a ladder very efficiently, only to realize years later it was leaning against the wrong wall. This is why reflection matters as much as consistency. Do you think modern life gives people enough time for reflection and self-awareness? Or are most people trapped in constant automatic behavior? Comment your thoughts.